Hello again, and welcome back to the Journey Beyond Yourself Summit. Today we have an absolute treat. Not only is Philip Sheperd an amazing font of wisdom and has experienced so much in your lifetime already, Philip, but he's just one of the nicest blokes I've met. And being in your presence is just I always leave feeling so wonderful no matter what you say. So I'm absolutely honored that you're here with us today, and I know that you've got so much to teach us and to talk about, so I'm really excited. So let me introduce you. Philip Sheperd is recognized as an international authority on embodiment. He travels the world teaching pre-COVID his embodied present process, which is a unique set of practices that you've developed for getting us out of our heads and reconnected with the profound intelligence of the body. And I know you have a slightly different slant on embodiment that we often think, so I'll get you to define that for us too. But you're the author of two groundbreaking books, New Self, New World, Recovering Our Senses in the 21st Century, which is just a fascinating read. And I think, did I read, Philip, that it began as a completely different title, which perhaps you'll tell us about later. And your new book, Radical Wholeness, The Embodied Present and the Ordinary Grace of Being. So these books draw on a lifetime of your research and experience and are really widely acclaimed. I also know that you have a passion for life, adventure, exploration, and this is demonstrated by when you were 18, you bought a bicycle and set off to travel alone across the world, which I just think is amazing. And I love that you say, you wanted to set out and discover other people's way of living. And I think you came back and you said, you only, where was it? The only time you suffered from culture shock was when you came back home. So I love that. So welcome, Philip, to our summit, and thank you so much for being here.
It's such a pleasure to be here with you, Sally, and thank you for that gracious introduction. I'm slightly blushing, but I'll try to hide it.
It's all true, and I didn't mention it. I think you can tell us a little bit perhaps about your journey, but you went to Japan and you were very taken with the classical, is it no theater?
Yeah, yeah.
And then you worked as an actor in film, television, on stage, and a director, writer, editor, and communication coach. So, I mean, you've had many lifetimes. Perhaps, what we really want to get into is your work about embodiment. And I know that you say it's not getting in touch with our body, I think I'm right in saying this, but it's allowing us to be in touch with everything through our body. So perhaps you want to start telling us a little bit about what you mean when you talk about embodiment, why it's important, and also just a little bit about how you got there.
All right. We have been on a 4,000, 5,000 year journey out of the body into the head. And we've come to the conclusion we're so married to that intelligence in the head that we barely have a cultural memory of what it means to think from the body, to feel the world from the body. And we talk about the brain and we confuse the brain with the mind. We think it's the same thing. And mind suffuses every cell in your body. Every cell participates in your awareness, your functioning, your attunement to the world. So because of this addiction, in a way, to living in the head, embodiment has come to be understood in terms of listening to the body. But if you're listening to the body, I mean, the metaphor is telling you your body is close. It's in the room next door. And what you should do is put your ear to the wall, separating you from it, so you can listen to what's happening over there. And it's a very corrupt attempt to redress a problem, because it more deeply entrenches the separation by urging us, to listen. And it's not that there's not a place for listening to the body, because inner work requires that attentiveness. But inner work, I think we really misunderstand who we are in this world. Inner work, we understand that as getting in touch with our truth, as though, if you reach far enough down inside yourself, you'll discover your truth. And it plays into our cultural experience of living in the head, because when you live in the head, you're living at a distance from the world. You're living at a distance from the body. The body is your vital bridge to the world. And when you dampen that connection to the body by separating from it, you end up experiencing the self as though you were in a boundary, as though you are separate. I'm in here and the world is out there. And so, inner work is about getting in touch with your true self. There is no true self independent of the world.
Yes.
And so to me, inner work is about finding and integrating all the coagulations, the corridors, the compartments, the blockages within the body that dull us to the world. And I can speak metaphorically, because there's a certain power to metaphor. Here's a singing bowl. There's the body. The body is a resonator, and the present at all moments is whispering to it, and it rings to the world. But what we've done in our culture is we've stuffed it with our anxieties and our consolidations and our rules and our dogmas. So the present is still going like this, but we don't feel it. And so all we can do is take charge of our lives and listen to the body and make decisions. And when you open to the spaciousness of your being, and there is nothing more spacious than being itself, then your body resonates to the world. And that is embodiment. When your body is open, and what happens then, another way of thinking about embodiment is that it brings into coherence the whole of your intelligence. And, you think of how we've been trained in school to make the body sit still as we fill our heads with the right information. And what happens is we come to believe that we can think more clearly if we dull ourselves to what's happening in the body and concentrate on the thoughts in the head. So we've internalized that you can think more effectively with a fragment of your intelligence than you can with the whole of your being. So for me, that's what embodiment is about.
Yes. Yes, beautiful. Thank you for that description. And it reminds me, because what you're saying really is that it's not to what was the Rumi quote about, our job is not to go out and seek love, or well, he talks about love, doesn't he? But really to seek to remove the barriers that we've created to it. And you're saying with the ball and the body, and we're stuffing our anxieties in it, Our job is to remove that so we can hear the body and we can allow it to be in resonance with the whole.
Yeah. And it's not even, it's just to, it's not even a removal of the obstructions. It's integrating them. So here's how I feel it, how I experience it is we orphan parts of ourselves. We orphan this energy, this emotion, this thought, because at some point in our lives, it's so overwhelming to allow that feeling, for example, to come in contact with our deepest being.
Mm.
So we hold it at bay, and the body fills up with these orphans. And what we are aspiring to, at least in my work, is to surrender to your wholeness.
Mm. Mm.
Wholeness isn't about fixing or removing or getting rid of or overcoming. It can only be had through integration, by bringing, and integration happens deep, deep in the body, deep in the pelvic bowl. That's where, as I experience it, the core of your being is.
Yes. So let's go there, because you talk and you've talked for a long time about the two brains. Now it's kind of come into its own. It's a bit trendy, we it's well accepted that we have this brain, the neurons in the gut. But you were talking about it a long time ago, these two brains, the cranial brain and the enteric brain, and how the gut brain we're ignoring, and how we
Yeah,
need to integrate them.
yeah, and I've been talking about it for a long time, but my gosh, there are cultures who've been living it for thousands and thousands of years, and it's a forgetfulness.
Mm,
Um, we move into the heads, and there are these two intelligences, or these two poles of our consciousness, the head and the pelvic bowl, and they each have a specialty. I mean, there's a reason there are two of them. The intelligence in the head excels at gaining perspective. So how do you gain perspective? You step back from something. You create a distance,
mhm.
which is what that intelligence can do. Shut down the sensations of the body and step back and gain perspective. And perspective is invaluable. It it's where we consciously think, is that intelligence in the head. It categorizes, it systematizes, it organizes, but it doesn't feel.
Mm,
You can operate on the brain. You don't need an anesthetic. It doesn't feel. By contrast, that intelligence in the pelvic bowl feels everything. It's where we can consciously be as opposed to consciously thinking. And that's what we're missing. We're missing that ability to be, to come back to that deep security of our being. And so we end up reaching for ersatz securities, for safety. I mean, it's interesting how intent our culture is on finding safety. Um, and I've noticed that if you're alive, you're not safe. It's sort of one of the characteristics of being alive. You're going to get hurt. You're going to get sick. You're going to die. I mean, that's life. But
yes.
we grasp at safety
Yes.
because we're missing that ground of security. And then what happens is we draw this little corollary in our lives that says, well, maybe maybe if I'm maybe if I'm less um, alive, I'll be more safe.
Mm,
And so we diminish our lives and miss the celebration. Miss, what we miss? Because coming back to that intelligence in the pelvic bowl, by contrast to that idea that our our truth lies, deep within the self, and that's what self work is about. I think we discover who we are as we come into felt relationship with the world around us.
Uh-huh.
And the intelligence in the head is superlative at known relationship. It knows everything. I mean, there's nothing I can see looking around. I don't know what it is. A tree, grass, a roof. I can name it all. So if I know what everything is, I'm off the hook for having to feel any of it. Why
Mm,
would I bother? I know what it is. And so we stop feeling. And that intelligence deep in the pelvic bowl comes into felt relationship rather than known relationship. And you stand before a tree and you feel its presence. And who you are is illuminated in a particular way. Or you look at a little child playing on the sidewalk and feel its presence, and who you are is illuminated.
yes.
Or you listen to bird song and who you are is illuminated. We discover who we are as we come into felt relationship with the world around us.
Yes.
And the more deeply you come into felt relationship, the more clearly you discover who you are. And
Yeah.
it's not a static thing, it's an unfolding revelation
Yeah.
generated by that deep relationship with all that is.
Yeah. We're not in silo. We're not living in a vacuum. We're a part of a much greater whole. And to cut ourselves off from that, we just miss so much. You mentioned safety and how we love to grasp at that. And that make perfect sense when you said, I've never heard it put so simply. It's quite a good strategy. If our purpose is to feel safe, well, then we'll cut ourselves off from being so alive so we feel more safe. But it makes so nonsensical. But I mean, we can't help but talk then about the past year and how, safety has been pulled, perhaps literally and metaphorically, from under us all in some degree. Do you think, and are you experiencing, and are you finding, are people naturally falling more into your work because we don't have that safety beneath us and we're falling out and experiencing the life as is? Or is it kind of exposing a greater need for everything you're teaching?
I think it's more the need is being felt more deeply.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, you know, there's only there's only one security, that there's only one true deep security I think that anyone has, which is the security of their being.
yes,
And to come home to that, to rest within yourself and feel your being and feel how your being is held in the embrace of the world around you. No one can take that from you.
yeah,
But this emptiness that we have left behind as we've migrated up to the head,
mm,
there's a scary darkness there,
yes,
and there's a need, and I think that need is what impels our addictive society. There's a void
yeah,
within our being, and we are trying to fill it
yeah,
with distractions, with drugs, with alcohol, with shopping, with whatever it might be.
yeah.
We are restless. It reminds me, if I could divert, there's a lovely story about Carl Jung, and he came to America and was traveling around and visited a Pueblo village and was sitting with the elder, and they were exchanging views. And at one point, the Pueblo elder said to Carl Jung, we think the white man is crazy. And Carl Jung said, oh, and what is it about us that makes you say that? He said, well, you're so restless. You're so ill at ease. You're always grasping, needing more, more, more. And Carl Jung reflected on that and he said, well, yes, that's true. Why do you think that is? And the elder said, well, you say you think with your heads. Jung said, well, yes. What do you think with? And he pointed to his heart and he said, we think here.
Yeah.
And it's, oh, and it was like a lightning bolt for Carl Jung. But
Yeah.
we are, that insightful observation that we are so restless. I mean, we are devouring the planet. And from my point of view, we are devouring the planet because of that emptiness that
Yes.
we've left inside ourselves.
Yes. 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 So where does the heart fit in? Because you talk a lot about the brain and the gut. Where does the heart brain fit in?
I don't talk much about the heart because our culture recognizes its importance. We send little heart emojis and we have Valentine's Day and um but there's an error, I think, in that we are trying to go from the head to the heart.
Hmm.
If you go from the head to the heart sort of remains under the supervision of the head.
Uh-huh.
It's you meet someone, oh, I should open my heart here, or now the heart. I mean, if you imagine the heart like a flower blossom, the stem of that blossom reaches down into the pelvic bowl, and the roots are in the loam of your being.
I love
So
that.
the heart is designed to express what your being is experiencing.
Yeah.
If your heart's not expressing your being, what is it expressing? And so as your being, as the bowl of your receptivity opens to the world and you receive it, the heart opens. It doesn't have to be, it knows what to do.
Yeah.
And so I mean the heart, it's not that the heart isn't important. It's that if you try to go from the head to the heart will be left unsteady, uncertain, unsupported.
Yeah.
So to connect with your being is to open to the world in a way that the heart will just respond to. And so I think of the heart as a portal, and it's the portal through which my wholeness meets the wholeness of the world.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that image of the analogy with the flowers. You're so great with the visual analogies.
Mm.
So you also talk in your work about the feminine and the masculine parts. And I know that you bring them into the two polars of our selves, the head and this bowl within our gut, the bowl of our being. You use the masculine, feminine. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to in a way because um, way back in the early Neolithic, we discovered agriculture and we started domesticating animals and built permanent settlements, and everything changed.
Uh-huh.
I think it's impossible to exaggerate the impact of that. So, so imagine you're the first person with a seed and you push the seed into the earth and you pat it down. With that gesture, everything has suddenly altered. So that piece of ground now somehow becomes yours. It's no longer just the breast of the mother. This is yours. And the little shoot growing up beside your seed, it's now a weed and it has to be pulled. And the animal coming along is now vermin because it might eat your plant and it has to be killed. And the tree growing up beside your little plant is blocking the sun and it has to be cut down. Everything changes. So what happened, there was this, um, it's like troika of changes that took place as our relationship to the body changed. We moved from that felt relationship of the pelvic bowl into the systematizing, controlling intelligence of the head. And as we did that, the Neolithic cultures moved away from the goddess of the earth and turned towards the gods. They moved away from the earth itself and turned to the sky where the gods lived. And our culture, which had been centered around the mother, regathered around the father. And I don't think we can relate to the world in a way that is dramatically different from how we relate to the body. I think our fundamental relationship is with the body. And if you're sitting in your head demeaning the body, you have crowned that male part of the consciousness, that organizing, controlling part, and turned your back on the intelligence that abides within the body. And that goes back. I mean, if there's a dialogue by Plato called Timaeus, and in it, Timaeus was this very wise man. And someone asked Timaeus, tell us, Timaeus, how did the gods create us? Well, said Timaeus, first they fashioned this divine orb based on the spheres of the heavens. And then they realized it wasn't going to be able to move around without a vehicle. So they grew it arms and legs and a torso. So there we are, 350 BC, and the body is being described as a vehicle, and the head as the divinest part of us. So the deeply saturated mistrust, demeaning rejection of the female lives within our bodies. We have rejected that intelligence in the body, which innately we understand as lesser than and female. And so suddenly a normal human being is a man. You know, and a white man at that within our culture. It's a horror. And you know, we're doing a great job of beginning to introduce women into roles of leadership. But the women who ascend to those roles play the man's game very well. And I don't think they're encouraged to bring values of nurturing and holistic thinking into that sphere very much. They conform to the culture. They've learned how to do that. They are not invited to alter the culture because we all live in our heads. And the head, the head should be in charge. Every hierarchy in our culture has as its leader the head of that organization. And you know, I think of the church, and I think of the leader of the church in this institution based on faith and love, and maybe the leader of the church should be called the heart of the church. But no. It's got to be the head. And as long as the head is in charge, we will remain incapable of coming into harmony with the world around us.
Yes.
And that's the bottom line for me.
Yes. And this is so relevant to now. And because there's this huge movement of women massively in Australia and around the world saying, enough, we've had enough. We've had enough. And being heard, and the system is turbulent now, and it's moving. So let's hope that something will, you know, emerge and change as a result of all this. But it's, as you say, we have to change and get those balances back in order. And when you say, you know, there are women in head positions, but they're having to take on the head roles instead of being able to come in with a new heart that's leading the way. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm hoping that this movement at the moment will shift that. It's like it's not working. masculine at the top, and it is shifting slightly, isn't it? We've got some heads of countries now, and whole ministerial cabinets that are shifting in that energetic change and feminine change. So yes, I mean, it's such powerful work, and bring it back a little bit for us, and then we're going to move on to how we can practically do to change in our lives. But bring it back for us for a moment to the body and the masculine and the feminine, and how we can start to balance that up.
So going back to the body as a resonator, if we could remember what it is to drop the center of our awareness into the body, so that the center of your thinking is deep in the body, and you feel the world from there. You feel the sights of the world and the sounds of the world. What you're doing is you're coming out of that exclusively male form of thinking. You see, one of the secrets is that male thinking proceeds by exclusion. So this is a strawberry. We exclude it from the category of vegetable, right? We work by excluding. We sort, we organize, we systematize by excluding. The intelligence in the pelvic bowl is inclusive. So you're coming out of an intelligence that insists on excluding and controlling, and moving into an intelligence that includes, and it includes the intelligence in the head. So it's not that the intelligence in the head is wrong or unnecessary. It's that it's come out of relationship. It's going it alone. And the characteristic of a male intelligence that's turned its back on the female is precisely the definition of a tyrant. So if you look at world mythology, if you look at the leadership around the world today, the totalitarian regimes are so male, imposing force and their concept of order, because they have rejected the female.
Yes.
And so the shift that is needed, and I see that shift taking place on the most personal level, how to come back into attunement with an intelligence that feels the world.
Yeah.
Because what we're missing is we don't even know how to come into harmony with the natural world anymore. We're the only animal on the planet that is creating disharmony rather than working towards harmony, harmonizing. I look at the birds and they're grooming the trees, and everything is supporting everything.
Yes.
And we come diametrically across that, and try to control. And we've got this little confusion. We sort of think control and harmony are the same thing, and they are diametric opposites. Harmony, my image of harmony is a murmuration of starlings. I don't know.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, you get 250,000 birds flying in this exquisite, it's like an amoeba in the sky. It elongates and shifts and lifts, and no one's in charge. Every bird is attuned to every other bird and to the world around them.
Yeah.
And that's the opposite of order. Order is control, is what happens when you've got an idea and you impose it on a living system and make it obey.
Yeah, I love that you brought that. It's one of the principles that Dr. Joe Dispenza uses when he's working with us, is this emergence where we're all leading. There is no one leader. That's how it works. Look to the animals. They move as one because they can feel, I guess, in your, kind of your work, they're feeling everything around them. So they're working as this greater whole, but we're so individualized and cutting ourselves off that we're all these individual, separate systems. Whereas once we open up to the whole, we can just move as one and in harmony. Yes.
And we are starved for information. We think we're suffering an information glut, but what we've got is words and ideas. We've got these anemic forms of digital information. And you drop into the present, you stand in the woods or in a meadow,
Yeah.
and attune.
Yeah.
And there is bottomless information. I think the primary function of our intelligence is attunement.
Yes.
I really believe that, because a wave carries endless information with it.
Yes.
And
Yes.
if we, there's no attunement without that spaciousness,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And we feel the body as this solid mechanism, this biomechanical valves and tubes and pumps and bones, and no, it's I think it was Sir James Jeans who said that if you put 3 grains of sand in Salisbury Cathedral, it would be more filled with matter than an atom. It's all space with these minute, bright specks of matter.
Yes.
And that's your being. There
Yes.
is absolute spaciousness there. And without that spaciousness, there is no attunement. And if you live in their head, there cannot be that spaciousness.
Yes. Absolutely. Fundamentally, when we get down to the smallest element of matter, it's mainly space. What is it? 99.99999% space. And the tiny bit that is material is vibrating in and out of existence. So I love that you bring in attunement in, because when it's coming back into existence, what are we attuning it to?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And attunement happens in a state of coherence. So, if my energy is divided, if my energy is at odds with itself, I cannot attune. Once my energy finds a coherence, then it starts to sing to the world around it.
Yes. Yes. So, Philip, let's bring this back to the practical. One of the intentions of this summit is to give people tools that they can implement, take action on, that will help them get to a next level, to transform past where their current limitations are, whatever that is for them, physical, mental, spiritual. So you are the creator of the embodied present process. So I know that you bring all of your work is so vast. I mean, you've traveled, you've experienced the world, the people within it, you've written, you're very well read, you bring, the arts and poetry into everything. You have this extensive knowledge, but you bring it down into processes that people can do to experience this embodiment, this being with the whole. Would you be able to start talking about some tools, even just one tool that people can actually implement to make a difference? And if you feel drawn to, nudge, nudge, I know you like it when I nudge you, to giving as a practice, I'd be all in.
Well, it makes more sense to me to talk through a practice than to talk about a practice.
Right.
In our disconnection from the female, we have disconnected from the earth. So we hold ourselves up here. We're not at rest on the earth. Going back to that Pueblo elder who said, "You're so restless." And we've internalized that up is good and down is bad. So if I say, you're looking up today, Sally, we know what that means. And in another culture, it might mean you're looking a little flighty and disconnected.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Right? But no, in our culture, up is good and down is bad. You're looking a little low, bad. Right?
Yeah.
And hell, we know where hell is, and we know where heaven is. And we've got this massive internalized value system, so that if we're in trouble, our energy goes up, 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 which is disabling. We're going into panic mode. So to countervail against that, it's helpful to explore what it means to allow your energy to come to rest on the earth. And that's where it belongs. We are at rest on the earth, or we are restless. It's
Yeah.
one or the other. So I'd invite the viewers to begin just by bringing their awareness to the body and to feel the breath wherever it shows up, and to let the breath be, to let it sift down through the belly. Maybe it sifts down through the arms. We are 65% water. We are fluid beings, so every breath wave travels through the whole of your being. And if you surrender to the breath wave, you feel it flowing, coursing down through the legs to the soles of your feet, up through your torso to the top of the head, down through the arms to the fingertips. And everywhere the breath wave travels, it is restoring the body to spaciousness. And then I'd invite you to bring your awareness to any little forms of energy in the body. And what I mean by that is there might be a little fuzzball of anxiety somewhere. And if there is, I'd invite you to just notice it as clearly as you can, locate it as specifically as you can, and give it your unconditional acceptance. So there's no sense that it's wrong. There's no sense that it should be changed or fixed. It's a part of you that has been orphaned. And you give it what the orphan longs for. You give it that love, that embrace. And you may notice a jitteriness through the body, an energy of anticipation. What next? How next? When next? And just bring your awareness down to the cellular level almost, where that jitteriness is happening. And just feel that energy. Locate it. Be with it. Be accepting of it. Bring your awareness as gently as you can to the legs. And there is such energy there through their connection with the earth. And we neglect it, we forget it. And just for the moment, feel that energy and connect with it. And bring your awareness to the energy of your thoughts. So not the thoughts themselves, but to the energy that drives the thoughts, the energy behind them. It's a little like peeking behind the curtain to discover the Wizard of Oz. And you'll feel that energy, that driver, and just locate it for yourself. And give it your unconditional acceptance. And then scan the body for any other little places where the energy is a little stuck, a little held, a little caught. And in every instance, give it your love. Don't ask it in any way to be different from what it is. And then open your awareness to the whole of the body, so it's almost like a star field at night as these clusters of energy show up in it. And then gently, gently, gently give that field of energy permission to melt. And you feel it melting within your being. And as it melts, it begins to trickle down like water through pebbles. And it's this kind of cascade descending through the body, through the torso, through the hips, through the legs. And you feel the first little bit of fluid energy arrive on the soles of your feet, and it pools inside your feet. And the more that energy melts and descends, the larger those pools grow, and they begin to rise up inside the legs like a tide. And still you're noticing anywhere that energy is held or caught or stuck in the body, and you give it your love, and you feel it melt under that influence. And as it melts, you feel it descending in the body. It's just settling, dropping down, cascading, washing. And in response, that fluid energy begins to rise in the legs, up through the thighs, eventually to the pelvic floor. And still you're noticing within the spaciousness of your being stuck bits of energy that are showing up, and you love them, and they respond and melt and descend to join that deep reservoir in the legs and the pelvic bowl. And that fluid energy rises up eventually to the top of the pelvic bowl, just below the belly button. And as the last few trickles descend and join that fluid energy, notice how much spaciousness there is in the body above the pelvic bowl. There is room within your being for all the world to pass through, for all the world to be felt. And then bring your awareness to that fluid energy in the legs and the pelvic bowl, and discover for yourself what it means to give that energy permission to come completely to rest. And you feel the weight of it come to rest on the soles of your feet. And it rests more deeply. And as it does, you feel it join the earth. It rests more deeply still. And you feel it join the present. And you may even feel it held by the present. And within your being is that utterly peaceful, grounded energy come home to the earth. And that spaciousness of the sky above, available to all the world. And that state of grounded sensitivity, for me, is a state in which the body's intelligence is ready to attune. And that brings the practice to a formal close. But I'd invite everyone to carry that forward, to cherish jealously that groundedness below and that spaciousness above. There's no need to leave it. It's your natural state.
Wow. I kind of don't want to leave it.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was so much more. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for gifting that to us. That was amazing. And I'm looking forward to having that on record to play over and over. And thank you for your time. You are an amazing soul, a beautiful man, and so much to share. So I'm just deeply grateful to you for gifting us your time and your knowledge and your wisdom and your experience. And that practice was divine at the end. I feel it not just for me and not just for everyone else listening, but for the greater whole. So, and the planet and everything that lives within it. So thank you so much.
It's been such a joy, Sally. Thank you.
I wish we didn't have to go, but I will honor your time. So thank you. You take care and we will speak soon.
Marvelous. Take care. Much love.
Bye now.